everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on episode 9 of Frieren Beyond Journey's End, and ooh, episode 8 last week was really good. I was like, lucky number 8, it was an amazing episode, it was hilarious, it was action-packed, it was checking off many, many boxes, and I'm excited to dive into episode 9. I woke up this morning, and I saw this shirt that my parents gave me once, and it has a dinosaur on it. I was like, Frieren, velociraptors, demons, why not? So that's what we're going with today, but I am super excited to dive into this episode, see what all we get, see Aura the Guillotine. Now, Aura the Guillotine looks like they're in a J-pop group. They look like they were maybe in Seven Deadly Sins. They have a very unique aesthetic, but, you know, as we've seen in the show time and time again so far in these last 8 episodes, looks are deceiving. So just because she, you know, Frieren looks like she maybe has been working in a library for the last 40 years, but we know that Frieren can be very dangerous, as we saw in the last episode. And so just because Aura looks like she is kind of cartoony does not mean that she's not insanely strong. And clearly Frieren is taking her serious enough to go battle her by herself. She's like, Fern, Stark, you guys can take care of these baby demons. The one, she's like, I got rid of Draught. He was the one with the wire. He was kind of a problem. Might have been a little sneaky and got you unawares. I got rid of him. Now you can handle Suabe and Lenny and have Lugner and them taken out. She's like, but I'm going to take care of the one that's the most dangerous that could actually hurt you all. So I like that. I like that Frieren, in her own way, shows her concern for her proteges, right? Yeah, so before we get started, I want to give a very quick shout out to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon. As you can tell, I'm really excited to just dive into this episode. I want to thank Alex Cornejo, Anime Annie, Be Happy, as well as Dana, Destiny Marie, Danger Zone, Eric Curie, Loisy GAK, Frogman, Lyndon, Matthew Palfinier, Murphew, Nicholas, Nameless Monster, Sunspots, Shimoyama, Trails, Translucent Men, as well as Schlapalot and Mateo El Fidel. And thank you all so much. I am so appreciative of your support. Mwah. All of my love. So yeah, I've got my coffee ready. I'm ready to dive in. I'm excited. I can't wait to see how this turns out. But we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive right into episode 9 of Frieren, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's go. That was way more satisfying than this. Oh my gosh. I'm kind of in love with this series and how it does things. What I love about it is that this series, there's a lot to love about it in terms of character development, in terms of the themes and everything. But what I like about it is it feels so effortless. Right? It doesn't feel like the action and the animation and the thematics, like sometimes you watch a series and the series is trying so hard to get you on board with it. It is trying so hard to illustrate its themes and what it's trying to convey, and you're just like, yeah, I get it. And it feels like it comes on too strong. This series is the polar opposite of that. This series trusts in its audience. And that's probably one of the best things about a series like this, is that it doesn't act like you're dumb. It doesn't try to force feed you thematics. It doesn't try to force feed you symbolism. It doesn't try to force feed you anything. It trusts that you are intelligent enough to put some dots together, and it does things in such a subtle yet grandeur and beautiful manner that you just have to sit back and just have your jaw hit the floor and appreciate it. And it's like, yes, thank you for your inso. Because it's been this slow, like, it's been a trickle into a waterfall kind of situation where at the very beginning you're like, oh, okay, the journey's over. This is the epilogue. She's going on these quests. She's meeting these people along the way. What are we doing? And it just kind of like starts out as a little trickle, a little stream. And now it's just like more and more and more compounding on itself. And it's so damn good. And there's a lot of character work that I really like this series doing. We'll talk about that. I'm so impressed. I just wanted to sit back here and just eat the popcorn and gawk at it and be like, ah. because it is just absolutely amazing. I love it. I love that this series trusts you, that you're going to stay on board with it. And my brother's only watched 5 episodes of this, and I will admit the first 4 episodes that sets up the world, I know that's not my brother's cup of tea. My brother likes Baki, like 7 Deadly Sins and more in-your-face stuff. And he was like, I don't know. He's like, it's a little too nonchalant for me. I'm like, no. I was like, you've got to watch to episode 6 and go, because episode 6 is where the pace, like, it takes a turn. And he was like, okay. So I'm hoping he watches more, because my brother's kind of one of those people, we're both Tauruses, so we're very stubborn in our ways. Once we kind of get a feel of something, it's hard to change that. And I'm like, no, just keep trying, just go with it. And he's like, all right. So I'm hoping he sticks with it, because I think he will be very rewarded if he does, because that's how I feel rewarded. Like, this episode was just so wonderful. So yeah, let's get into this. Frieren, this cold badass bitch. I love her. Aura the Guillotine, which is funny because we get some of Aura in this chapter, but it really wasn't about Aura. It was about Stark and Fern kind of overcoming the odds. But Aura is a center point. She's a focal point, so we're gonna talk about her. I like her a lot. She's a great character so far. I like that Frieren kind of, I said this in the reaction, she gives off a little bit of Karen vibes, where she's just like, in a cold way, like Frieren is not annoying like a Karen figure that would be like, I need more breadsticks and all this. I like that my Karen is just basically a woman from the South that's annoyed. But Frieren does give off that vibes of, oh, okay, I need to go get the manager now. Okay. She's like, bitch, I am the manager. It's kind of the vibes that she gives off. But so there's a lot of little things. I like the little 2-bell tower, it being a church. They went to go find. I like that Fern and them go find a hater figure, and that's mainly because Fern was raised by haters. So she's like, yes, let's go find a priest to come. I like that it's a priest more than anything. It's not a doctor. It's not just a random guy. It's a priest, and it ties back to Fern. Originally, I thought it was Stark getting his arms healed up, but it was actually the Count, which is good. I like that. I like this. I love this priest, though. The priest was like, they were like, oh, is he safe here? The priest's like, we don't have really any defenses. I just love it. It was very subtle. The priest being like, yeah, he could stay here. I mean, we can't hold off against a demon attack, but yeah, I guess you're as safe as anywhere. I love that he was so passive aggressive, and how like, yeah, sure, you can stay, but is this place gonna get attacked? I don't have homeowners insurance. It's a church. I love that part here. And I like that it's, again, this world feels very lived in. It's a very lived in world. And you see that it's just very sparing the decoration, the decor of all this, right? But I like that we get some backstory about Aura being like, I'm like that. I'm hoping that the Count, I feel that he is going to live long enough to pardon them. And I like that Stark and them are like, good, Frieren can walk around now. Yay. Mission unlocked. We're good there. But then they talk about Aura the Guillotine being like, oh, Frieren is your mage, huh? I like that you can see the priest's like robes for service in the background there. And then Fern's like, just so you know, and my dog is like wanting me to play with him at this moment. They're demons. You'll have to excuse them. But I like that he goes, oh, Frieren's her name. Oh, well then she was around during. The only thing that I was kind of like, oh no, about this part here is he said the elven mage who adventured with the hero. I felt a little bad during that moment because he didn't say Himmel the hero. He said the hero. And I don't know if that was like a subtitle through the streaming service that cut that out. But again, we're talking about going in the past and Frieren being concerned that as time passes, people will forget the ones of the party. They'll forget her friends and not remember them anymore, 100,000 years from now. It's already happening. Like, in that little line, it seems so simple, but him just saying, oh, the elven mage who adventured with the hero. He doesn't know their names. He knows Frieren's name after it was mentioned. He's like, oh, yeah, that's who it is. But he doesn't say Himmel. So I'm like, oh. Like, eventually, it's getting to Frieren's point that they're probably going to forget who they are, even though Himmel's established all these statues around the area. Frieren's like, yeah, that's a temporary solution, but, if you think of statues in your local area, I know there's a lot of statues around where I live. I don't know who any of them are for. And it kind of makes me feel bad. This series makes me feel like I need to go do my history lesson, being like, wait, are there statues around here I should know who they are of? It makes you kind of like be a little bit wary of that. Like you should know your local, history of your area because, that's otherwise you forget it and it's, null and void. And so then they talk about my family owes that party a great debt because during his grandfather's rule, they drove off Aura and her army. I do like the idea that Aura has all of these soldiers that are headless. It's like she doesn't care about who they are. She just wants their power. I kind of like that established there. But you can see the pendants. That's how it tells who they are. And Frieren's like, okay, I know whose souls she's gotten to go under their command and taken with her, which is a scary concept, right? So we know that Qual was one of the 7 sages. They're out. Aura is one of the 7 sages. Is the pink-haired elf in the OP one of the 7 sages? Probably. I feel like this series is about facing the 7 sages of destruction that are under the Demon King, whoever the new Demon King is now. I feel like the pink-haired elf is either the Demon King, but again, this series is about, looks can be deceiving. I don't know if the pink-haired elf in the OP is the Demon King themselves or one of the sages. I'm leaning now more towards one of the sages. I find it interesting in the OP that they're surrounded by books, kind of like Frieren, kind of like maybe are they going to be a foil to Frieren? I don't know. They seem like an elf, so who knows? But yeah, one of the 7 sages of destruction. And then Frieren's like, it's been a while. I liked it. I liked the way they casually greet each other. It's like Aura looks up and he's like, yeah, you want to do your nails and hair and talk about boys? Come on, what are we doing? 80 years, huh? I love her voice. What I really love that this series does too, from the perspective of being a female viewer, is that we have these characters. We have Frieren, we have Fern, we have Aura, and we have Lenny as well. These female characters that are feminine in their appearance, in their mannerisms, but they are also badass freaking strong and will probably kill you. I love that because, growing up watching shonen, it was like if there was a female character that was tough, she kind of had to present more masculine features to be tough, or she was very one note, one dimensional. And if she wasn't, masculine in some way, if she wasn't one note or one dimensional and being strong was all she had to her character, then she either was usually relegated to the sidelines or she was a healer because that's maternal and it's, feminine, or she was just like a trophy for the male gaze. And it was just like, as a female viewer, it was very annoying. I was like, because there was nobody you could relate to. I'm like, well, that's not me. So I guess I'll just sit here and like the guy characters because I relate more to them than I do any of the female characters on screen. So it is very refreshing to see a series where there are female characters that are allowed to present their femininity, but do so in a way that still translates to strength. And I like that. We'll talk about Aura versus Frieren and Fern, though, and versus Lenny, because there is some delineation there between them. But I really like that. I like that Aura has this kind of feminine, like Xena warrior princess look to her, but then she also is controlling souls. I like that. I'm personally a big fan of like magic and stuff that involves control because it's interesting, and the way that they counter it is fascinating too. So she's like, oh, you're heading to town, huh? She's like, you should probably turn back. I like that Frieren is like, hey, before I kill you, before I put that on the table, I'm going to try to negotiate. I'm going to try to do what Himmel wants me to do. She's like, if you want to turn back around, that'd be great. I made fun of her with the Libra symbol of the scales, but I like what that is. I'm wondering if she can just destroy the scales and what that does. If she destroys the scales, I'm sure that's it, but I'm sure it's more complicated than just being able to destroy it, right? So she's like, I have an overwhelming advantage. I have all these soldiers on my side. Aura is cinched to the gods. Girl is snatched. I would be like, I don't know if I have the body to pull off a cosplay of her. I'm like, that'd be pretty awesome to see an Aura cosplay. I think it's doable. I just think it'd be a lot. And so I like that Frieren's like, look, there's a big theme in this episode of establishing the idea of strength and limits and whether or not strong equals win, because that seems to be like the big major discussion in this episode. Is Frieren starts out by telling Aura, she's like, yeah, the magic that you contain, I don't think humanity will ever catch up to it. I don't think humanity will ever be able to have magic that tips the scales and controls souls like yours does, but it's a disgusting magic. It's not good. And so she's like, I can't stand here. You know, kudos to you for unlocking this potential, but it's gross and I'm not going to stand for it. So it's got to go. And so we'll talk about this idea when we get back to Lugner and Lenny, R.I.P. And so she's like, I do love when she like she's doing like the Madonna Vogue, and she's just like, it took a lot of work to gather this many. Like she's just, she's delectable. I love Aura's like just villainous demeanor. She's like very Poison Ivy, very, very coy, very Lust from Full Metal Alchemist. I like it. And so we see all these charms. We see the blue lapis lazuli that's on the one necklace, and then one that looks like the wings and everything looks like it's from something else. It looks familiar. Looks like it's related to Hater. And then you have the one that's the grandfather. The pendants and stuff showing the souls that have been taken by Aura. And she's like, I recognize these suits of armor, so I've got to kill you here after all. Frieren's like, I tried to let you go, but it just wasn't gonna work. So the scales of obedience. I'm curious, and I like the heart that is on the centerpiece of the scale. I'm very curious to know if the other sages have. I'm also realizing that Aura's entire motif is balanced. Like she has the 3 braids and they're symmetrical. She has the heart-shaped thing with the scales that's symmetrical. Interesting. And the heart is tied to the soul, which is her control. Yeah, interesting. Qual didn't seem to have a relic or a spiritual object that helped him do things, but she does. So I'm curious if other sages have objects as well, or if it's just, I mean, with Qual, it makes sense he didn't have an object. His magic was literally just a killing spell, and that was it. Hers is more complicated and complex, so I'm going to be curious to see what the other sages have, if they just have a spell like Qual does, or if they have an object that is like to add layers to that. So the scales of obedience, the idea that the reason they haven't been able to defeat her is her magic allows her to force others to obey her will. And as she is beyond human knowledge and reason, she weighs the magnitude of their mana against each other. So I felt like Frieren might have an advantage, you know, that she could possibly override the mana that Aura has. And that might be the case. Because she's like, well, she's 1,000 years old. She's 500 years older than Aura, at least that we know of. We know Aura's at least 500 years old, and that's how long she's been using her magic. Now, whether it took her like 100 years to develop this technique or not, we don't know. But we know that she's at least half of Frieren's age. And Frieren does establish with Fern that age and experience plays a huge factor in all this. So that could lead us to believe that Frieren will be able to overcome the scales and tip them in her favor rather than Aura's. But there's a question of that, right? They do establish that the scales are fair. The scales are not biased towards Aura. That's the gamble. The gamble is the reason why the spell is so strong is because it's a risk. If you face a stronger opponent, yeah, you're going to die. But if you don't, then you more easily will be able to defeat that individual. So there's a gamble there. And I think either one of two things. Either the scales are going to tip in Frieren's favor because of her age and experience, one of the two, or they talk about how if you're a strong-willed individual, you can temporarily gain control over Aura against her. It's not a permanent thing, but it gives you a chance to strike. And for the Count's grandfather, it didn't work overall, but it was something that pointed out a flaw in the system. It did point out like a fatal flaw that was there, like a crack in the established gamble. So I'm curious to see if Frieren is going to have enough mana, because it seems like Aura's strategy is she's like, she's like, you have a lot of mana. You could tip the scales, but that's why I have this massive army. So I'm going to have them all start attacking you and wear you down, and then wear you down to the point where you can't tip the scales, and I'm going to win and have you under my control. So I feel like either Frieren's going to have enough mana that that's not going to happen, or I wonder if Frieren is going to tap into Himmel, his memory, and be like, no, I'm a stronger individual because I have a purpose. My purpose of protecting my proteges and protecting the legacy that Himmel created is stronger than your desire to just cause chaos. That you don't have as defined a purpose as I do. And that's going to be the situation. And she's like, you're not as strong as Flom's barrier. So we'll see. I really thought this episode that we were going to have Aura versus Frieren the whole episode. I thought that's all this was going to be, was Frieren versus Aura. And it was like a fourth of it, but that was really it. And I was like, oh, okay. We're focusing on getting rid of the other two first. But I don't think that Fern and Stark are going to go near Frieren at all at this point. I think Frieren, because Stark is like on death's door, or if he's not, he probably should be, because he got like slaughtered this episode. Poor Stark, like a literal pincushion. I'm thinking that Fern is going to get Stark out of the battlefield and take him back to the Count and just look at both of them and go, but even she has this big wound as well, so it's going to be treated. This poor priest is going to like be like, I don't got enough first aid kits for y'all. You need to go see a doctor, not a priest. But then again, are there doctors in this town? I don't know. So she turns them into puppets for all eternity until their body withers to dust. That's terrifying. So all of these knights that have just, are headless there, it's not because she chopped off their heads. It's literally because they decomposed into nothing. They just That's terrifying. Like, it's the idea of her carrying around this zombie army and they just all like decay and decompose until they're just shells of armor. Terrifying. I love the way that's described. And I love that her soul is like the black with the purple, and then their soul is like the white. But the other thing I was thinking of too is that someone like Stark could be able to tip the scales, because he talks about someone with a strong will overriding it temporarily, and Stark kind of takes note of that. So it made me think of Stark in this entire episode, because Stark is clearly not as strong technically as maybe his opponent is, but his willpower and his drive and him not giving up allows him to tip the scales and literally sacrifice himself. I was like, oh my God, Stark. We're going to talk about his battle here in a little bit. But they say that hasn't happened once in the 500 years since she's been around. That those with a powerful will could temporarily resist the spell. And of course, that would be a great motivator for the Count all these years with his family history, knowing that his family, a member of his family, was able to tip the scales, even if temporarily. That's something that, your family would carry with you after all this time. That it'd be something to like know in the back of your head would be something you could do. I'm guessing that maybe also, I'm wondering if Aura tried to, we don't know this episode, but I'm wondering if Aura tried to like get control of Himmel or something, and Himmel was able to resist, and then Frieren was like, oh, bitch, no. He's my man, not yours. No. I'm wondering if maybe that was the case. We don't know, right? But Frieren, I like Frieren is able to dispel. And Frieren says that, she's like, I did the dispelling thing instead of just blowing. Also, the idea of Frieren in the past just firing off flashy spells left and right to destroy the army sounds exactly like Fern. That sounds exactly like Fern did against Lugner. And it shows that maybe Frieren like learned from Himmel's example to be like, okay, that's not the proper thing to do, because it's going to dispel mana as well, and it could possibly hurt others. And she's like, no, I didn't do it because Himmel got on to me. Because, yeah, he's like, it could put you at risk, put you in danger. Now, this line here, that as she's wiping away the armor, she's like, that's all the more reason not to do this. And she's like, what? Like, what did you say? Like, what do you mean not to do this? Why? And Aura says, well, Himmel's long gone, isn't he? I'm like, what? What's going on? Someone in the Discord shared a piece of fan art yesterday, and I was like, ooh, this feels maybe spoilery, where it was like a picture of Himmel and Aura and like this fake OC child, and I was like, I didn't say anything, but I told the mods, I'm like, I feel a little uncomfortable in the channel right now, because I feel like that's maybe we know nothing about Aura and nothing about her relationship with Himmel, so it feels a little spoilery to see this fan art because it's suggesting that there maybe is some details that we don't know yet. I was like, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be that person to be like, oh, don't share art, because I do love the discussion happening in the channel, but I was just like, oh, I feel uncomfortable here, so I like got out of the channel and was like ran away. I was like, I'm gonna wait because I don't think this is. I think my mods are good enough that they would definitely delete something if it was spoilery. So maybe it's nothing. Maybe the whole Himmel and Aura thing is just because she mentions them here and they're just like, fandom sometimes take like the tiniest sliver of something and run with it. So I'm like, I don't really know if I want to, call it out, but it felt spoilery to me. I was like, ooh, is there some like history between, is there like a love triangle between Himmel and Aura and Frieren, except it's not a love triangle because Himmel, why would he like her? No. But I wondered, based on this episode, if she tried to control him and Frieren stopped that. So, but she says, well, he's long gone now, so why do you have to listen to him? Why does it matter? And Frieren's like, okay, fine. If that's the way you want. She's like, you guys are monsters, so I guess it doesn't matter if I kill you without mercy. And I was just like, Frieren just says that as cold as a cucumber, just like not even worried. Like, fine, I guess I don't have to listen to him, but I feel like she's still going to listen to him in the long run. So kudos to Stark. I love Stark being like, well, there's only one thing to do now. And he's like, there's only one thing to do, and that is we've got to go ask Frieren for help. I was really rooting for him in this moment because he like got the jacket on, got his axe, and he's like, all right, we're going to do our best together. We're fine. And I thought he was going to be like, let's go take care of the demons. But no, he's not quite past that point. He's like, yes, I'm going to get on my hands and knees and beg Frieren to return. I just love that Fern, for a hot second, feels like she can, be like, what a great guy, Stark. And then he says something like that, and she's like, back to square one. I love that it's consistent for Stark's character, though. We know Stark's going to do the right thing in the long run, but it's going to take him, he's going to go about it in a roundabout way, and he's going to whine until it happens. But I love Stark's character so much. I felt so bad for him in this. I felt so bad for him in this episode because I was like, Stark, quit getting hurt. I don't want your character to die, please. And they make you feel, I'm like, oh, I was like, how is he going to survive this? I'm like, I'm sure they have magic that can heal, but I'm like, how are we getting past this? Because he's going to need some healing spells, please. I was hoping that Fern would like heal his arms before they left, but maybe she doesn't. Maybe Frieren's the one that knows that advanced magic and not Stark. But I'm like, how is Stark living after this? Because he's like had some blood loss. He's been hit in some vital areas. I don't know. And I'm glad that they discovered the blood being on the coat and everything and saying like, you even got blood on your coat, and then they realize what it is. I like Fern is very, she's very perceptive and is like, nope, get out of that. And then, man, I was not expecting her to get attacked so soon. And then Lenny comes with the axe, of course. I like that Lenny is a copycat. I thought from the last few episodes that she just had the ball of energy and she was just going to be shooting little balls of energy. This is much more creative. I like the idea the ball of energy becomes whatever weapon she needs to access. She's like, and it also ties to the fact that they're demons, that she's reading who her opponent is, and she can read his mana, see what it is deriving from. And she's like, oh, I can copy that. Bloop, and there's that. I like it. It fits the predator mentality the demons have, where it's just imitation, and they're just imitating humans, and here she imitates her opponent. I think that's really cool. Also, it gives us a chance of seeing Stark versus Ison with actual stakes on the line, and it not just being a teachable moment, being like an actual battle, right? I thought that was really cool. Man, Lugner underestimated Fern, though, and Fern kind of calls him out. Fern has learned a lot from Frieren over these past few years, but especially the concept of being, like, cold and calm under pressure. Like, that idea that Frieren has taught her to be, like, a stone cold badass. I'm like, yes, Fern. I'm like, oh. And she, like, I love the animation bit where it's just like, as he's walking away thinking and monologuing and trying to figure everything out and rationalize in his head, she, like, pulls the staff closer to her. You can kind of see it moving in the background. Yeah. I mean, you could argue that the show takes a little bit of liberties with making these demons so nonchalant. Like when Lenny says, she's like, "Welp, I've killed him. I'm going to hurry back and help Lugner." You could argue being like, she walked really slow to get back to him and gave Stark plenty of time to get up. You could argue that. But the show does do a good job of expressing not only one, that the demons are, I guess the demons are imitating humanity, but humanity would be really frantic and panicky, so it's not really imitating them. But the second thing is, the demons are very sure of their victory. They are very sure they're going to win. Like, even as, because logically in a demon's mind, they're like, well, I'm stronger than you. So because I'm stronger, I'm going to win. And I like that this episode focuses on, it's not just about pure strength. It's about technique, but more importantly than that, it's about your will to not give up and to keep pursuing until you crack the shell of that strong opponent and find a way to break through and reach them. And that's what Fern does, because yeah, Lugner is technically has the better technique and has more mana, but Fern is faster, and so she makes him doubt himself and has to, and because he's a demon and he's not a human and he's not technically as complexly intelligent as a human, that's the thing. He has to be sitting there trying to rationalize and work it out, kind of like a computer system, right? So when he's monologuing, talking to himself, being like, well, why would she do this? What is going on here? What is this? It's because he's imitating a human, but he's not as smart as a human. He's still trying to figure it out, what's going on. And she's able to whittle through that. And then he gets distracted for a hot second when Lenny dies, because they can sense each other die. And that second of getting distracted by Lenny's death gives Fern the opening to go in and attack him, right? But man, she is so cold and terrifying, right? I love that she kind of knows, she figures out quickly how to manipulate the demon to like throw him off, right? Because she's not talking, right? And he's like, well, I need more knowledge of the situation. And he wants to find out where Frieren is. Mm-hmm. And then Lenny, I like in Lenny's case, it makes sense why she doesn't rush back to Lugner's side, because you might be questioning like, well, she didn't run back very fast. So if she'd been a little bit faster, this would have been a whole different story. But one, the demons think they're going to win. They know that they're stronger than their opponents, so they think that it's kind of in the bag. And two, she establishes several times during this fight that Lugner doesn't like to be interrupted, and Lugner doesn't want, and she's like, if I make him mad, he's going to get onto me. And she's like, I don't want to do that. So she takes a little bit more time than maybe she should have, and that gives Stark time to re-engage her. And she's like, oh, well, I can't go back to him until I've made sure that Stark is out of the way. And so it's just like, it's these little tiny things that all add up to give them the win. And I like that I like Frieren in the flashback is very honest with Fern, being like, look, you're never going to catch up to me. I'm 1,000 years old. You're not going to live as long as me. You're never going to catch up in terms of my experience. But you have some things that I don't. And that's why we need to work together, because I may have the stronger power and the more stamina, but I'm not as quick as you. So I have you dispel a lot of these demons because you're quick, and that can be used to its advantage. It's going to take you less time to get through an opponent than it would for me. So, and I like that, Fern remembers that and knows that that's her strength. That's where she has the opponent beat. The animation in this episode, just so good. The animation was beautiful in the battle between both of them. Like the animation with Lugner versus Fern, the way, like, and the deaths of both of them, just, oh my god, it was so good. So good. I just wanted to like pause the screen and just sit there and stare at it. But again, like what I said about femininity versus strength, like Lenny has like the little kind of Lolita like girl outfit on, but she's still extremely terrifying, like in how strong she is, and she just doesn't care. She's just this way, right? You have Aura with this kind of like demonic Xena warrior princess kind of vibe with the armor, but it's like feminine. Then you have Lenny with like the Lolita look. Then you have Fern, who has like the long, like she just looks like has her muumuu on, but it's like this. And then you have Frieren, who just has lots of layers on and everything. I like that because growing up with Bleach. wasn't as bad. Naruto, I would compare this as far as the women characters go, but Bleach, I love Tite Kubo, you know, do what he gotta do. But there's a lot of half naked ladies running around. I think of Halle Bell, and I'm like, okay. Sure, Jan. Let's go with that. But I'm glad that modern shonen has evolved to the point where, like, we can show badass female characters and their tits don't have to be hanging out every 5 seconds. It's a fact, right? I grew up with that going, can never cosplay as that. I mean, I could, but I would not feel comfortable at all doing anything like that. No. But yeah. But oh my god, the way that as Fern's walking towards Lugner and her hair is just like swishing and just going back and forth, she looks so elegant and regal and beautiful. And I was like, yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, queen. And then Stark, my boy Stark. I love him. I love him in this episode that he just keeps trying and practicing. And God, he gets like his neck slit, he gets his eye, his side, his shoulder, he just gets carved up in this episode. And I'm like, somebody give Stark some healing juice, like real quick. I don't know how y'all are going to do that because we've not really seen that in this series yet, but, and the thing about it is, I don't think we've seen, like, we've seen bits and pieces and flashbacks of the heroes battling, but we never see them like roughed up or bleeding or scruffed up. You would think from the flashbacks so far that we've seen that they just walked up, got rid of the villains, and just moseyed on their way. We don't really see them getting bloody and beaten and bruised and battle ridden like we've seen with Stark and Fern so far. So it will be curious to see if we see flashbacks where like Frieren and them have to like lick their wounds and tend to one another. And maybe that's why Hader is there. Just he packed a bunch of bandages and it's like, all right, let's get to work. Maybe that's the whole point, but we haven't seen that yet. I do love that we see little baby Lenny, little baby demon. We see Ison like with his massive biceps. And again, a small animation thing. Ison's arms now are not as beefy. Like, it's hard to gauge Ison's age because all you see is like beard, helmet, eyes, and like he has all the stuff hiding his body. But then you see like the lines under his eyes, the wrinkles, and you see his arms are not as beefy as they are in this flashback, right? And we see little baby Lenny. I like little baby Lenny with her little, like, looking at the tree branch and she has little eyes poking out. She looks like a little Jawa from Star Wars. She's like, ooh, teeny, just sitting there. Like, girl, love that little detail. You're the warrior I once memorized. And Hader's like, yep, that's 57. And we see them here fighting the army that I'm assuming is Aura's. So I'm curious if Hader's he got a spell book there. Is Hader reading off spells like a magic barrier to protect them? Is that what he's doing? I want to know more. I'm so excited. But I'm assuming because Hader and Ison are over here battling this army, we'll see Himmel and Frieren elsewhere. Maybe we'll get that next episode. We shall see. But poor Stark, my dude. Oh, sweetheart. I felt so bad for him. And then Stark's like, you just got to keep getting up. I love that. I love that theme where he's like, I don't understand what my master was telling me, but I'm going to keep going. And I love like the hand reaching for the axe. I love Stark so much. He's maybe my favorite character of the series. I mean, I like Frieren and Fern. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Frieren and Fern. I love our smut reading granny and Fern, who's like so cold as ice. The Foreigner song is playing in the background. But Stark's my favorite. I love him. I love that he's a coward, but he still perseveres. He's so good. So yeah. And then he keeps finding her. And I love that he's like, look, my master's blows were heavier. And then you see the axe get embedded in the ground. You're like, oh shit. And he's just like, my master's blows were heavier. I can handle you. I'm like, I love it. I love it so much. But yeah. So she's like, fine, I'll battle you. I like that they have names to their attacks too. She's like, air fasten. I'm going to look up air fasten. I know somebody's going to comment what it means. But ear fasten means capture. Interesting. I feel like that's interesting. Ear fasten means capture in German. I guess if she's like, maybe that's interesting. So how does that relate to copy and how she works? I'm gonna see, because we see her like leaping towards him, and then he says blue terre. Let's see what blue terre is. I'm gonna write this in German. Blue terre is hemorrhage. Oh, that one makes more sense because it's blood related and it's like the coagulation of the blood. That move makes more sense. The Erfassen one, I don't know if it makes as much sense to me, but I'm sure you all will talk about it in the comments down below. Also, Suabe, I'm sad Suabe's gone. He was here for a short second, but he left a distinct impression as Lugner. It's just the way that I just love Suabe as a voice actor because there's so much emotion and passion in his voice that even when he's delivering like just a random phrase like blue terre, it's just like you just feel that emotion as he voice acts. He's just such a pro. I love him. I think he does such a fabulous job in this. And then the idea that the seeing the blows between his ability and Fern's makes what looks like fireworks going off as Stark and Lenny battle. Oh my god, that was so beautiful. That just looks so good. And then he decides that he's just like, he goes in, he baits himself. But he knows her strike with the axe, because the axe is heavy. So he knows that her strike is going to be more shallow than it would be if it was ice. And he's like, I'll do it and I'll just cut you right through. And that's what he does. Damn. And oh, his face there. I'm going to shout at that. His face there where he's like, bitch, I got you. He's like, you don't swing as hard as my master does. Ah, that look. Oh my God. He's like, they don't have any weight behind them at all. And then just strikes. And we know how strong his strikes are from seeing him strike that damn rock over and over again. Oh, Yep. And then she's gone. And then she's like Zoltrak. What I love about this one like thing is that the idea that she used the magic that was the demons against them. And it's like, yep, bye, bitch. This episode was really good. Really good. And we didn't even get to Aura versus Fern yet. Or Frieren. Didn't even get to that. I don't think that Stark and Fern are making it to Frieren's side, which is a good thing, because I think that Frieren also going by herself keeps her from being distracted, because we know now, based on Aura's ability, that Stark and Fern, even though they have a strong soul, they do not have the years of experience and mana saved up that Aura does. So it would be it'd be very bad for them to encounter her. And I know that Frieren does not want them becoming slaves to her power. So she's like, yeah, you guys stay here and battle these demons. I know you can handle them. I'm going to go battle this bitch because she's a bit stronger. So, Also, 28 years for Aura, knowing that she's over 500 years old, is not a lot of time for her. So her taking all that time to heal up makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, oh my God. I'm assuming we're getting Frieren versus Aura next episode, and I'm excited to hear more about that backstory. Maybe we'll see bits and pieces of their battle with her in the past. We'll just have to see, but so yeah. I really loved this episode. It was gorgeous, and I can't wait to hear your comments about it below. Please, no spoilers, hints or clues. I'm so excited to see the next episode, but thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Frieren.